Greetings, Ranger fans. Jake here for another edition of Database Rangers Power Reviews, where we take a look back on all of the classic episodes of Database Rangers Power Reviews as we continue our big countdown of the 100 weeks until the 100th and final episode. So it is wonderful to see you guys in the chat. Welcome, Chris. Jenny C, sorry that you won't be able to stick around. I know that this week I did have to postpone the stream by about an hour, so sorry for any inconvenience that may have been for anyone. I was in the midst of tech rehearsal for tomorrow's summer cabaret with the Worlds Elsewhere Theater Company. So if you would like to check that out, that is tomorrow, Saturday, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Worlds Elsewhere's YouTube channel. I will be one of the MCs as well as one of the performers, so you should absolutely check it out if you get the chance. There's going to be a lot of really cool acts, and I'm looking forward to it. Welcome Hayden, welcome Devious, welcome Nightwing. All good to see all of you. So yeah, I've been continuing my efforts towards wrapping up filming on all of my supporting cast with Power Reviews. Today was going to be a very big filming day, but unfortunately, an actor had to reschedule, so things have been pushed off to another day. But there's going to be a lot of big filming going on throughout the rest of this month. Definitely by the end of this month, I'm planning on, at the very least, wrapping up for one of our core key cast members. And I'm hoping to wrap things up for all the rest of our supporting cast by the end of August as well. I've already knocked out a number of supporting characters, as well as a few cameos for characters we haven't seen in a while, who will be back for the final episode. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, it's been fun getting involved with theater again. Through Worlds Elsewhere. The online aspect of it makes it work a lot better with my schedule. And, yeah, the 100th episode is going to be quite a trip. I feel as though there's still little elements of the script that I'm still working on, but I feel like a lot of things are going to ultimately be coming full circle, and I'm looking forward to everyone seeing that, as well as all of the insanity in the episodes leading up to that. It's just going to be just hard-hitting, boom, 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 crazy episodes from here on out. Like, all of 94, or all of 93 was sort of a slow burn, and ended up on a cliffhanger, and obviously we had the cliffhanger from 92 as well. So both of those are going to be getting picked back up on before the year is out. And we have some major reveals on the way. As you find out some more reveals through what's going on with Database and his adventures, as well as what it was that Guy saw at the very end of episode 93. So I'm looking forward to you guys seeing those. I feel like these are some reveals that I have kept pretty close and have been working to pace out as best I can, and I hope they are satisfying. Now, speaking of Crazy Power Reviews reveals, we are now into our summer season of year one for our look back. So before we dive into that commentary, let's not forget our 3 equally non-controversial phrases that we always recall at the beginning of every stream. So, number 1, say it with me, chat. Black lives matter. Number 2, say it with me, chat. Fascism is bad. And number 3, say it with me, chat. Superheroes are fun. They should all be considered equally non-controversial. Welcome, Scott. Welcome, Dan. Yeah, stay right there. We haven't gotten to this portion of our revisiting of Power Reviews, but we're coming up on some more good stuff. with episode 34 of Database Rangers Power Reviews, our review of Power Rangers Turbo episode 22, Trouble by the Slice. Let's get I'm also hoping that my tiny little laptop is going to be working okay for this, because I did have to return my work laptops. And of course, all of the, look backs, all of the little segments on how Database's life has gotten very, very confusing. And yep, voice that was our secretary from year 2, who I think I mentioned last time, was intended to be more properly introduced earlier, but unfortunately, well, fortunately for her, she had a child in the intervening time, so that changed our ability to actually film during that time. I love my ridiculous efforts to try and block the door. The furniture in that room was just so not conducive to what I was doing. Also, you might notice the Greetings Ranger fans and Welcome to My Life was a voiceover. And that was one of only a very few voiceovers that we'd actually had in universe at this point. Once again, hinting at Database Ranger's technopathic connection to the camera. Hence why he's able to do these voiceovers that no other character can do. And this was just such a ridiculous episode to film. Because, we've talked about the classic couch of Power Reviews plenty. And this was literally filmed behind the couch. Oh, really? Are we getting buffering? Oh, come on. There we go. But, so what I did was I pushed the couch forward, and I set a series of, moving boxes that I had had since college behind the box all in a row. So that's actually a series of 3 cardboard boxes, all laid open, all in a row, that I just had to crawl through repeatedly, that were set up behind the couch. Wow, that was such, oof, that was a brutal pun there. I will never, I feel like I will never actually just skip out an opportunity to make fun of Cassie's best friend, because that episode was just so bizarre. with her dating her dog. That will never not be weird. And there we get the little subtle hints of, I mean, it's not terribly subtle that Database has a crush on Cassie here. But it's one of our subtle hints that Database is actually the Phantom. And this is usually when people think back on the earliest clues to his identity, his crush on Cassie is usually thought of as one of those earliest clues. Despite the fact that we'd actually been hinting at it since episode 4 in very indirect ways. Oh gosh, Turbo was your first season. Wow. Yeah, I know the second scene for a lot of people was sort of a big entry point for them coming into Power Rangers. Although ironically for me, it was nearly my exit point. Around this time, I got very frustrated with the show because I was invested in the journey that the characters had been on up until this point. There had been a lot of stuff that had, all been built up from Mighty Morphin going into Zeo, and a lot of that got laid off as we entered into Turbo, But then there was, okay, the Rangers are graduating from high school. They're going off to college. That is something new. I haven't seen that before. I was looking forward to that. Same thing with the Millennium Message, and the Blue Centurion, and Divatox's twin, or Demetria's twin sister, who would have been eventually shown to be Divatox. So all those plot lines I was so interested in seeing developed, and then they got dropped. And I felt like everything just kind of got reset to the beginning. So while that was a great entry point for a lot of people, that almost killed the show for me at the time. And this episode was just so silly to me when I was a 12-year-old. It just felt so silly to have all this pizza focus. And I really liked going back and reviewing it and reassessing it as an adult in the context of the broader view of the franchise. And for years, it was thought of jokingly as like the worst episode of Power Rangers, the episode where they got baked into a pizza. And it's been so fully reassessed in modern day that it's become considered a modern day classic, which is really funny. And yes, Hayden, I'm absolutely excited for the Lightning Collection Phantom Ranger. I do need to pick that up when it comes out. And you know, so I was so frustrated with this pizza episode, but then the very next episode brought in the Phantom Ranger, and that held my interest just long enough that even though the following run of filler really kind of had me phasing out, I still had enough residual interest to check out the finale and Chased into Space. I totally forgot I had the slice of pizza that needed to be in for filming that. I'm sure that was that I just told MJ, like, look, we're going to have pizza tonight because I'm going to need a slice for filming. And yeah, you know what? You're right, Scott. They do look almost exactly like the Jungle Karma pizza uniforms. Gotta wonder if RJ bought them out. Yeah. So this episode came very close to killing Power Rangers for me in certain regards, and I'm glad that it didn't, and I'm glad that I'm able to look at it with much better humor now. Because it is a much better episode than I gave it credit for at the time. I just was so invested in the deeper story arcs that I'd sort of lost sight of things that, back when I was 12 years old, of, hey, Power Rangers is always going to be kind of goofy, and that is not a bad thing. That can be fun. Power Rangers in Space is obviously still my favorite season. But I've learned to embrace Power Rangers even when it's not being seriously arc-based and lore-based, and having all those things that I sort of was really getting invested in during Power Rangers in Space and before that in Power Rangers Zeo. And finding that there's always going to be something fun and interesting that can be entertaining in a different way. So my relationship with this episode really morphed over the course of the years. So I have much fonder feelings about this episode, especially in light of how it got, called out later in Forever Red, which was just a great callback. This was the boiler room of our college theater. um, and actually, one thing that's okay. I still love using O Fortuna for this one scene. It just feels right. I don't know why it feels so right, but I loved using O Fortuna for this. Um, my dad's favorite movie as a kid was Excalibur, and that is, you know, that makes big use of O Fortuna in one of its culminating scenes. Um, and yes, the entire reason that I'm in a boiler room right now is to suitably juxtapose things with the baking into the giant pizza. Blue Centurion really got a weird run of things. Yeah, the wishing coin two-parter was still just such a weird thing to have as a two-parter. Even though it did end up being kind of plot relevant because that was when Justin's dad got a job back in Angel Grove. And honestly, I can't quite remember exactly where I got the idea that Trouble by the Slice would be fun to film inside of an air vent, but it just felt like something that would be an enjoyable premise. Outside of, it feels like you're being baked in a pizza while working through this air vent. I think it was just a concept that popped into my head, seemed funny, and I just ran with it. Yeah, I guess that the Willem Dafoe Green Goblin does kind of have Elgar's grin. That is fair. Yeah, there's. Oh man, that was so awkward to film. I'm trying to remember how I even did this. Because if you look at my hair, I am literally upside down here. Oh man, how did I do this? I I I, I believe I had set myself up with um was it over a table or a chair? No, wait, I think it was actually I was hanging backwards over the couch. I think was how I did that. With my back laying on the couch, and I had to use my arms, which are supposed to be hanging free, to just sort of keep supporting myself so I wouldn't fall over. Um, so I am upside down. You can even see my glasses are lifting up off my nose. And I am just sweating up a storm during this whole filming bit too. Um, oh yeah, and if you were watching Beetleborgs at the time, this would be just everybody was having fun with kids' heroes. Um, like Turbo was really more of an issue because it was so jarring for long-term fans to have everything be broken up. But it was just, very accessible for everyone else. And so it did kind of lead to an uptick in ratings again after they had sort of leveled off from all of the all of the serialized storytelling in Zeo, and it's sort of been wearing thin during early Turbo. Another bit of buffering, so frustrating.
It's just an extraordinarily memorable image that serves as a perfect visual metaphor for the casual observer's perception that Power Rangers is nothing but silly camp that
Also, I love that throughout this whole episode, Database isn't deliberately talking to the camera. He's talking to himself. But because he has a connection to the camera is just always where he's looking. He can do in-universe aside glances to the camera, and it works just because the camera just positions itself where he's looking. He's got that psychic connection to it, or technopathic connection.
Actually, from a PR perspective, it's a surprisingly experimental way of just getting to know some of the characters better. We get to see how Eldar, Ragog, and Porto function as colleagues when
yeah, this was if I recall correctly, this was Chiplin's first. I think this may have been his first episode that he wrote after joining in, or was it his second? He'd already written Welcome to Venus Island back in season 2. But my brain is failing me at the moment because him and Jackie just sort of Jackie and Mark Litton, who was credited as John Fletcher at this time, were basically just the only 3 writers from this point onward, starting with Stitch Witchery. Also, you can kind of see my shirt is almost falling up over my head. I had to keep tucking it back into my pants to make sure it wouldn't. Oof. That didn't actually have an opening underneath it. Okay, that shot. That. That shot right there at the very end where I suddenly come face to face with Guy, had to be shot a very specific way to make it work right for the symmetry of the shot. Because one thing that I really wanted to emphasize was how intimidated I was by Guy, how intimidated Database Ranger was by the character of Guy. But one thing that I had managed to obscure pretty much up until that point was the fact that I'm taller than Dave by like a couple inches. Not like a lot, but I'm taller. And I have a fairly large head. So when we went face to face, like, 1, my head was taller. 2, his head was smaller, so it wasn't perfectly symmetrical. It was clear that I was taller, and it was clear that my head was so much bigger. So what I actually did was have him position himself closer to the camera and me farther from the camera, just so that our heads would be the same size. And I had to sort of bend my knees to make everything line up just so. Just to get that shot just right. And also, a very tiny little detail that I don't expect anyone to have ever noticed, but I just do it to keep things consistent with Database Ranger's costume. Whenever you can actually see his lower torso, his lower body. The pants that I was using, I think I was working on a set for the local theater group or something like that, and I had a little tear in the knee. And in universe, that knee is what got caught when he was falling down the air vent and he was hanging from it, and then it tore and then he fell. So I always have Database wearing a pair of khakis that has that tiny little tear in the knee, and it's because it got that tear from when he fell through the air vent. So that is a super tiny Easter egg. If anyone is capable of physically seeing it, I don't know. But those are the pants that are my costume pants for Database. The pants with the tiny little rip in the knee from when he fell down through that air vent. And yeah, it's a fun sort of transition episode through through the summer saga, through this summer season, because it's an 8 episode season, and I kind of decided to structure it where there were basically sort of two trilogy parts and then two bridging parts in between. So this is arguably the second part of this trilogy of episodes of Database trying to escape Alphabet Soup before we get into the little 2-part bit of him returning home and recuperating, and then the final 3-part bit of him going back to Alphabet Soup to rescue Mayo. With Mayo being kidnapped right smack in the middle of the 8-episode arc. So I tried to pace it out really well and structure it really well. So this was sort of a fun little goofy follow-up to what had been a very self-reflective episode in the previous one, in episode 33. And before we get into the big wham fight scene at the end of 35, which completely changes everyone's perceptions of what the show even is. And I always wanted to keep trying to have those big twists. Not just in terms of the plot, but in terms of what type of show this is. Now, we're kind of at a point where, yeah, we're not going to really keep getting changes into what the show is at this stage. You know, we're in the final run of things, but I'd say probably the last episode that really sort of changed up how the show was functioning was arguably episode 85, when it became clear that we were going into the rift. 83 obviously changed things up just by us getting onto the spaceship, and after that, I mean, 83 was really one of the biggest change-ups in the format of the show, because everything suddenly got moved off planet, which was someplace that the show was pretty much always eventually going to go. But here at this point, I really wanted to start changing things up where, oh wow, all of a sudden there's this arc where he's got these secret agents chasing him. And then the second part, oh, the guy who we've been thinking this whole time might be a secret agent is part of this. This isn't just something separate from everything else. This is things coming together. Which is why that guy reveal at the end was important. And then all of a sudden in the next episode, we get the big reveal that it's actually got action in the series, which we hadn't hinted at in any way. And, you know, with Database Ranger being such, you know, a nerdy, nebbish guy, not even able to move the bench to block the door, and, you know, not wearing an outfit that really shows off in any way, you know, what sort of, you know, musculature I may or may not have. You know, it is a big change up in that next episode. And, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm still pretty, you know, slim guy, not really that. I don't have that classic Power Rangers build, not really. But I do have fun doing all my own stunts for this show as best as I can. With the exception of a few cases where I've needed a stunt double simply because I'm fighting myself, as we saw in episode 90. So yes, next week is Silence is Golden. When I do my first Power Rangers in Space review, another episode where Database gets to fawn over Cassie, and the big reveal that Database can fight, which is something that he'd never been in the context to demonstrate. And that's always been a big thing of this show, as I've mentioned before, that everything changes when placed in a different context. I feel like context is a very important aspect of the Power Rangers franchise. You know, it's all about recontextualizing footage, and with Power Reviews, I always want to be continually recontextualizing the story as it's going along. You know, even back in episode 92, obviously we had a big context shift with the landlord laying down all this backstory stuff, changing perspective on previous interactions with him. And even in 93, we had a context shift in terms of filling in all the gaps of parts of the story from episode 91, where we get to see what was happening in the other parts of the ship, while we were seeing things happening in episode 91. Obviously, Guy was doing all these other things in parallel. So there's always another side to what's happening that we're not seeing at any given time. And each time we get that little bit of extra information, it changes what the story is. And I've really enjoyed doing that. And you know, I had debated early on whether or not I was even going to have Database fight Guy in episode 35. Originally I was going, but that's something I'll get into next time. I don't want to get too much into episode 35 this time, especially since it is late. But yeah, this episode was definitely, despite being fairly simple in a number of regards in terms of camera placement. I mean, we have the goofy little scene at the beginning with him trying to lock the door, combined with the voiceover. We have just me repeatedly crawling through that same air vent, which is just 3 boxes. We have the bit of me hanging upside down. We have the bit of me in the furnace room, boiler room. And then we have the last bit with Guy. And, you know, just like in the previous episode where it was all set in a single room, I was still trying to keep things for the reviews fairly simple in terms of setting and delivery, while still trying to make the camera angles and other things more dynamic, and transitioning us away from the sitting in the chair, sitting in the couch style of review, or sitting in a booth with the restaurant episode, and transitioning more into reviews that are placed within other contexts, other actions, getting more dynamic camera movement, even though we never actually see camera movement because it's a quantum utility electronic eyeline, so it's only in a specific place at any given time. But I wanted to make the, you know, changes in tone, changes in style surprising without being jarring. In a, oh, well, now it's just a completely different show kind of way, but instead showing this evolution of the show changing. And I was also, throughout all of this, using each of these classic episodes as opportunities to analyze their seasons as a whole, which I had just done, as I talked about last week with Dr. K, and looking at how all these different threads have been brought together for that episode. And then again here with Trouble by the Slice, where I was really looking at it in the context of Turbo as a whole, and how it's viewed by the fandom, and how that view has changed and evolved in different contexts, comparing it to other episodes of Turbo, etc. So, I probably yammered on about this long enough. I know it's getting late, so let's not forget our 3 closing, equally non-controversial phrases. So, as always, number 1, say it with me, chat. Love is love. Number 2, say it with me, chat. Trans rights are human rights. And number 3, say it with me, chat. Robots are cool. Even when they don't know, that's what they are. So thank you for joining me again. Next time, we should be back on schedule with our usual 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Eastern Time streaming schedule. I will try to give you all a little bit more notice in the future if there are any other shifts. We had been initially trying to do the tech run for the World's Elsewhere Cabaret on a different night, but availability just wasn't there for everyone else. So make sure to tune in to the World's Elsewhere YouTube channel tomorrow to see me MC alongside our as one of the MCs for tomorrow night's Summer Cabaret, where we'll have a bunch of performances, including a little music video by myself. I hope to see you guys in the chat, and apart from that, I'll keep you updated as more developments unfurl with regards to upcoming Power Reviews episodes. I'm hoping to get 94 together by the end of next month, but we'll see. And until next time, farewell, Ranger fans, and let the power protect you.